Coming up on this episode of Heal Squad.
The body is magic. It has magic powers to create health and wellness and to resist disease once you get the systems working in alignment and the body doesn't feel it's under siege.
Hello, Heal Squad. Happy to be back with you today. Today, we are going to be diving into a really cool conversation with Dr. Jeffrey Bland. He is widely known as the father of functional medicine, a true pioneer in systems biology. He's the founder of IFM, the Institute for Functional Medicine. And we're going to be talking about food as thy medicine. As the great Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine. Kind of fitting for the holidays as well. So we're going to talk. I was very curious to learn where the origins of functional medicine came from, where it is now. His company is Rejuvenating Immune Performance, cell by cell, and he has an incredible rediscovery that you guys are going to love, and I'm already ordering. But first, our quote of the day. Nature is brilliant. She's magic, and she only allows us to understand her when we put in the work to do so. She doesn't give up her secrets without effort. I love that. And of course, it is from our guest today, Dr. Jeffrey Bland. So I hope you guys enjoy our conversation. Well, Dr. Bland, welcome to the Heal Squad.
Well, Maria, thank you. And what a great name for your podcast. I'll tell you, there's nothing we can aspire to greater than healing both ourselves and those around us and the planet. So this is a great opportunity to have a conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like I want to start with your journey because they call you the founder of functional medicine for a reason. And I really want the Heal Squad to understand the origin of functional medicine. And it sounds like you're the guy to tell us.
Well, yeah, you know, life is not a linear path, is it? As they say, life is what happens in between your plans. So, for me, the development of the concept of functional medicine was certainly not something that I would have preconceived, many years ago when I was younger. But as a consequence of having the opportunity to travel the world and meet a lot of extraordinarily insightful people that were innovators on health, and I've traveled more than 6 million miles in my life, so that's a lot of plane rides and a lot of hotel rooms, but more importantly, it's a lot of really remarkable experiences I've had with men and women around the world who are really innovating this whole concept of what is health. And I was a university professor, started in 1970 in the medical school as a professor, and then I had a sabbatical a couple of years with Dr. Linus Pauling, two-time Nobel Prize winner at Stanford, uh, in which it changed my life irreversibly, for the better, I would say, in that I learned that this concept of health was much broader than I ever really fully understood as a medical school professor. And I think that's a consequence of the fact that he was a magnet of people of all sorts of experiences around the world that were notable, other Nobel Prize winners, other people in literature, in arts, in all sorts of different fields. And I had the benefit of just living vicariously with him for those 2 years as a sabbatical researcher. And at the end of my couple of years there, 81 through 83, as I was packing up the box in my office next to his office to head home with my family to go back to Washington State to start back into my academic teaching position again, my tenure teaching position, he asked me a question. He says, Jeff, it's been really great to have you here. I hope we'll continue to have a relationship, but I wonder, as you're heading back, I wonder if you feel your classroom is big enough. And I got in the car with my kids and wife and then started heading 1,100 miles home in the car. And I was working on this concept. What was he really saying to me? What was he asking? He really wasn't asking. What was he telling me? And I eventually, by the time I got home, recognized that what he was really saying to me is that maybe having my 100 to 200 students a year and doing my research was not enough. Maybe there was something broader and bigger and more important than that in terms of this whole concept of health and function. And so I gave up my tenured faculty position, which was kind of crazy when I think back to the time, because I had a mortgage, I had a family, I had all the things of real life. I burned the boats. I decided I was going to start a company to help teach health practitioners how to do nutritional medicine in their practice. That was my business plan. And that was 1983. Uh, I think I made the right decision. It was not a linear path. It went, ups and downs over the topography of life. But to make a long story a little bit longer, I'll finish out by saying what happened was that my wife then, in 1987, said to me, Jeff, you've been traveling all these miles, you're doing all this lecturing and these research projects, and you're talking about all these wonderful people you're meeting. Maybe we should host a meeting here in the Pacific Northwest and invite some of these people you're talking about to come in and do a whiteboard discussion about what would health be if it was idealized. Take away licensure, take away reimbursement. Let's just talk about how would you develop a healthcare system that was really focused on health and not just on disease. So we did that. Thanks to her leadership. She organized this meeting in Victoria, British Columbia, on Vancouver Island in 1989. And we brought in about 40 some people that were willing to come from all these different disciplines around the world. And we had this discussion, which turned out to be extraordinarily exciting. And it was so stimulating that people said, hey, let's do it again next year. So we went back to the same place the following year. And the second year, I had this dream. It really was a dream in which we'd been talking about in all these discussions was about function. It wasn't about disease. It was about function. And then I asked myself the question, where do we teach function in health sciences? Where does it reside? And I came to the conclusion that unless you were in rehabilitative medicine or some form of geriatric medicine, you probably didn't talk about function. And you certainly didn't talk about it in the context that we were really exploring it, which is every organ has a function and every organ speaks to every other organ. And so the body's function is an aggregate of how all these things are talking to one another and how they're influenced by the information they get from the person's life, the exposure to their environment, what they eat, what they think, who they are, their relationships, how their sleep patterns, their exercise.
That is incredible. I think for the Heal Squad, it would be important to kind of understand what were the kind of, I don't know, prerequisites of functional health? Like what were the pillars, let's say, that you guys were teaching back then?
Yeah.
Because I would like to know if you think there's a difference between when you started to now and the positives and maybe even the negatives.
Well, thanks, Maria. That's a very insightful question. Wow, I had never been asked directly that question, but it's a probing, deep question to ask because there have been changes, obviously, over the last 35 years in the way that functional medicine is contextualized. Let me first of all say that when I started, or when we started, my wife and I started the Institute for Functional Medicine, I had a really great colleague that had been my friend, almost my non-blood brother. Dr. David Jones, a clinical practitioner down in Southern Oregon, a medical doctor, who the alliance between he and I think was really the right kind of connection because he was a patient advocate par excellence. He was and still is a remarkable physician, and his caringness and his compassion and his concern for his patients was a very, very strong teacher for me about what good medicine was when it was done correctly. And of course, my skill was I brought this kind of intellectual side to what is function and how does it relate to healthcare and how does it relate to the body of science that's emerging. And the marriage between those two things with my wife's administrative and management skill, I think is what gave birth to the concept to begin with. And then we were very fortunate to recruit a whole group of early adopters into the early stages. And my wife then went on and got American Council of Continuing Medical Education credit for our courses so they become certified for postgraduate accreditation. And that particular approach, I think, allowed us then to deal with some really remarkable thought leaders because what we finally said was that function could be broken down into four quadrants or four subtypes. One was physical function, which has to do with the body's mechanics. It's muscles and bones and ligaments and tendons and fitness. And second kind of function would be metabolic function, which relates to metabolic pathways and all the kind of things that are going on within our body to convert food to energy. And then the third is cognitive function, how our mind is capable of moving forward and backward in time and create solutions to problems that were never before understood. And then the fourth was behavioral function. And when we laid those four concepts down, I recognized that they were actually not taught in any formalized way in any medical school or any health practitioner course. And so we recognize that if you were to measure those four things in people, if you could get a way of assessing those four things and then put them all together, you would have a different definition of health than just the absence of disease. And it would leave behind an old model that says health is the absence of disease to a new model which says that health is related to wellness, resilience, and functional capability of doing what you want to do. So we really redefined the whole layout, the whole formalism of medicine, saying there's really two kinds of medicine. There's disease-focused medicine, which is, by the way, needed. And so I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And then there's health-focused medicine that is built on function. And we need to be teaching both of those. And we need people who are skilled in the art of both of those to really deliver a full architecture of a healthcare system. And I'm all applaud those people that want to go into the disease care model. That's fantastic. But we need to raise the bar so we have the equal opportunity for people who want to really study how to help people to be healthy, that they have the same degree of formality, accreditation, and knowledge base in their skill set as do the people who are surgeons and people that are doing terminal disease care. So that concept really was the concept of birthing function medicine, in which we said, let's make sure that the Institute is not discriminating among people with different degrees in the health sciences. So we don't care really what their degrees are. What we care is their dedication to the concept of function and their willingness to go back and open up textbooks and study things that maybe they didn't even like that study the first time, but study them in a new way. This way around health rather than the way around disease. And my colleagues, because I was coming from an academic background, my colleagues said, Jeff, this is a fairly idealistic concept you have. Or people who have licensures are not going to go back and open their books again. They didn't even like it the first time. They're not going to like to come back and do it again. You're never going to get people to affiliate with this concept because it's just takes too much time. Well, that was a legitimate criticism, but I think they were proven wrong. There are a remarkable number of really passion-driven, high quality individuals who are seeking out how to best serve their patients in the area of health that are willing to do that and go back and restudy things that from a new concept and become very skilled in the art. So now, over the course of the last 30 years, what's happened is the evolution of functional medicine has come from the inside. Now we have all these wonderful people bringing their skills, their perspectives, their backgrounds, enriching the curriculum, enriching the perspective as to what is functional medicine, how does it get clinically practiced. Now, some of the criticisms that functional medicine has received by people who I think don't understand it is that it is all about testing and vitamin supplements. I've heard people say that, oh, it's just a bunch of tests and then it's just giving people a bunch of dietary supplements. Well, it is true that if you want to understand the complexity of a person's function, that you're probably going to ask different questions than if you just want to diagnose the disease. And diagnostic criteria for disease, as defined in the DSM or in the ICDs, the International Classification of Disease, are very discrete and very specific. And now we know with AI, you can pretty much diagnose a disease without a human being, just on the basis of some reasonably simple tests. If you want to understand their chronic illness, however, which is much more complex, you've got to ask more questions, and you've got to be a better detective, I think, diagnostician. And so it is true that functional medicine generally uses more tools to understand a person's functional status. It's also true that functional medicine believes that all principles of lifestyle play an important role in modulating a person's function. That could be their sense of purpose in the world. It could be their sleep patterns. It could be their activity and exercise patterns. It could be their food. It could be specific nutrients. It could be their biochemical individuality that needs to be addressed because they're not like anyone else. And so they need a slightly different personalized approach. which then requires maybe augmentation of certain nutrients or certain substances by nutritional intervention. So those are all tools that are available to a functional medicine practitioner. It's not a one size fits all type of approach at all. So I think the criticisms that are levied against functional medicine are ill-founded by people who don't really understand that it's not a series of treatments. It's a way of thinking about the patient. It's a way of bringing information into a new format that allows you to understand the origin, what we call root cause of these chronic illnesses that don't allow themselves to be treated by single drugs. And we have a whole host of them. In fact, 70% of healthcare expenditures now go to chronic diseases for which no drug is really available to treat the cause. They're treating the effect. I think functional medicine has a big opportunity to create a different value system as it relates to healthcare versus terminal disease care.
Do you think that it's shifted in any way that you are not on board with, let's say? For example, like, has any of it been taken to a different place or a different level that you're like, nah, that's not, I don't agree with that?
Oh, Maria, you're asking really the great questions. So I recognize that any movement in the history of humans on the planet, once it starts to get sticky, it spreads out into all sorts of different complexions, and people usurp it or leverage the concept or take it to be their own and use it to their advantage. And that's historic with any concept, I believe, from electricity to to microcomputers. We can see it. These technologies can be used for the good and for the bad. I think the same thing has happened over the decades with functional medicine. There are a lot of people who want to say they're functional medicine providers or practitioners who are defining it in their own way in such a way that it's not really centric to the way that functional medicine should be taught or how it should be practiced. And so they use the banner to create a certain value system for themselves that allows them to tag along, but it doesn't really help the integrity of what real functional medicine is all about. So it's a part of what happens when things become more well-known, become more popular. But I think overall, now that there are hundreds of thousands of people around the world that are doing or talking about functional medicine, the advantage to its popularity exceeds the disadvantage of people misusing it. That's kind of how I would see it on balance.
Got it. Where is preventative care in those pillars? And is it just innate in the idea of function? And if you're functioning properly, you would be preventative.
I think prevention is kind of a tricky word for me. And the reason it's a tricky word is no one would, I think, criticize a person who says, I would like to help you prevent a disease. So that sounds like a very meritorious objective. But once you introduce the concept of disease, you now have moved away from health and wellness into the disease model. Just the use of the word disease is now brought you back to being owned by the disease care system. Rather than prevention, for me, what I think we're trying to do is to promote optimal function in the individual. Because if you promote optimal function of the individual, the outcome is you will prevent disease. But your focus is not on disease prevention, it's on optimizing function of the individual. So maybe it's a subtle linguistic alternative, but I think it has fundamentally different objectives associated with it. And it's a different language system with a different set of tools that leads to a different outcome. When you talk about resilience, when you talk about wellness, when you talk about function, that's different than disease prevention. Now, I have been musing for some time about what's the central thing that ties these two together? Is there some switching point where prevention and function really meet in the center so they lose the difference between the two of them? And I think there is a point. And it's where the body is in conversation with the outside world, 24/7, 365. That's where both prevention and function meet. And what are the places in the body's processes where we are in 24/7, 365 communication with the outside world? And those are two systems of the body. One is the immune system, and the other is the nervous system. And the nervous and immune system are directly and intimately interconnected. They're speaking to one another all the time. So that led me, or has led me, the last 7 or 8 years to really focus my attention on this interconnection between the immune and nervous system, because I think there is where the root cause of many problems emerges, is when you have the immune and nervous system interacting in such a way as to try to protect us from the hostility of a foreign world and feeling that we're under siege. We could be under siege emotionally, physically, chemically, metabolically. And our body has processes built into our genes that help protect us against danger. And those protections occur through the activation and changes in the function of our immune and nervous systems. So when we get stressed, or when we get ADHD, or when we get post-traumatic stress syndrome, those are all neurological responses to a threat that our body has felt that has put it in jeopardy. So our body responds by doing the thing that it's designed to do, always to protect us against death. The same thing holds in our immune system. You know, we look at autoimmunity as a good example. There's 88 different autoimmune disease diagnoses. 80% of those conditions are found in women. So I have heard some people say that women have somehow defective immune systems because they have these immune problems called autoimmunity. Well, that couldn't be farther from the truth. Women have more sophisticated immune systems than men. And it's very simple. Why? A woman may have a foreigner living in her body for 9 months. It may be even an opposite sex. And she has to get along with that thing for 9 months. So her immune system has to work extraordinarily sophisticated to be able to maintain her health and function while she's having this foreigner that's developing in her body. Therefore, women are kind of yellow canaries. Their immune systems are very attuned to what's going on in the outside world. So this concept that women have defective immune systems couldn't be farther from the truth. They have highly sensitive and sophisticated immune systems. And so when we see a rising tide of SLE or rheumatoid arthritis or immune thyroiditis, we don't ask the question, why do women's glands suddenly fall apart? We ask, what are those body's endocrine systems being exposed to that would give rise to an alarm response? Because what the woman's immune system is doing is probably responding to what it considers a hostile exposure, rather than she has a defective immune system. So this way of thinking about it is the functional medicine way versus the pathology way. We're not thinking about the disease, we're thinking about the woman's immune function related to her lifestyle, environment, factors that are modifiable. This concept of upstream or root cause took me into this interrelationship between the immune system and the nervous system, and I came to recognize that the immune system is in every organ of the body. Can you think of another organ that's in every other organ? The heart's not in the liver, the kidneys are not in the brain, but the immune system is everywhere. So why is that? It's because it is the central way that your organs are communicating with other organs, with the outside world. And so you say, well, Jeff, don't forget about the microbiome. Well, the microbiome is part of the outside world. It doesn't live inside your body, it lives outside your body, but it's sending messages to your immune system because 70% of your immune system is clustered around your intestinal tract. You might say, well, why is that? Why would the immune system be around your intestine? Is it just no better place to put it? No, it's because over the course of life, a person will eat between 10 and 15 tons of foreign molecules. That's called our food. And those are not the same molecules that make us up. So our body has to make a decision, are they friend or foe? And that's what the immune system of the gut does. It allows friendly stuff to come in and not friendly stuff not to come in. And so therefore you have this very rich immune function, particularly the first line of the immune system called the innate immune system, that is sitting on the surface of the mucosal tissues of not only our digestive system, but also our lungs and our breathing apparatus, because those are places that are also exposed to the outside world, and our skin. So these are places where you find a lot of immune cells. This construct that our function may be determined by how our nervous and immune systems perceive the outside world and then translate information to every organ of the body. When you start digging deeper into that, you find out that virtually every disease, from type 2 diabetes to coronary heart disease to arthritis to cancer to osteoarthritis, has a connection to immune activation, to our immune system not being at home. That has led me this last several years to say I'm going to spend the remainder of my years as a person still in the field, and I'm just turning 80 this year, so that's I don't know how many
Oh,
years are ahead, but I like to think a few. And
congrats.
thank you. I'm going to be spending my time really focusing on how do we understand immune function, because the immune system turns over every 4 months. People don't know that. Our immune cells that make up our body's immune system, 4 months from now, will be, to the majority of them, will be new cells. So the question is, are those new cells replacing old cells? Are they better, worse, or the same as the one they're replacing? And in most cases in our country, as people grow older, their immune cells that are replacing the old ones are worse than the ones they're replacing. So that's called immunosenescence, immune aging, and it's directly correlated with longevity. The faster your immune system ages, the faster, the shorter your life is going to be. And it connects to all diseases of aging. I really started recognizing, now hold on, if the immune system turns over every 4 months, what can we do that the immune cells that are going to come in are as good or better than the ones they're replacing? And fortunately, science and Nobel Prizes are being won around that very topic. This year, the 2025 Nobel Prize in Medicine and Physiology was won by three investigators, two who I know personally, on the discovery of the immune cell called the regulatory cell, which is the cell that actually kind of is a shop boss that understands what's a foreigner and what's not, and helps to maintain immune resilience. And it has a specific gene in that cell, that immune cell, which is called the FOXP3 gene, and that gene controls 1,000 other genes that regulate how our body's going to respond to something it's experiencing, either friendly or not friendly. And it turns out that the FOXP3 gene expression in immune cells is in part related to what we eat, what we live, and how we think. And so we're now saying, hold it, does that mean that personalized lifestyle medicine could actually influence how our body responds to the outside environment by rejuvenating our immune system? Absolutely, yes. That is a
Well, you see
whole,
what meditation does. Meditation changes your
that,
immune system. So of course,
exactly.
your thoughts have so much power.
You said it exactly on target. That's why I formed this company, Big Bold Health. I thought this was a fairly bold idea. It has a big implication. So I got one more shot at the goal here. I'm going to go Big Bold Health. So that's where I've been spending the last 7 years now, is focused on this particular topic.
I love it. So when you mention that 80% of autoimmune diseases are in women, has that number drastically changed since you started functional medicine, do you believe? Because I don't know the statistics, but I would imagine it has jumped tremendously, and we could talk about why that is.
I don't know if the percentage has changed, but the number, absolute number, has gone up significantly. Systemic lupus erythematosus, or SLE, which used to be a very esoteric and common autoimmune disease, is now becoming much, much more common. Immunothyroiditis, Hashimoto's disease, which used to be very atypical, is now becoming very, very common. Again, because 80% of the cases are in women, we hear it more in women than we do in men, although men do get it as well. So I think the rising tide of autoimmune disease, to me, is indicative of our bodies are being exposed to more and more foreigners that it's having to fight back against. And as a consequence, we are becoming the innocent bystanders to our own immune system, which starts damaging our host tissue and produces the kinds of disorders that we see with these autoimmune diseases.
So I wonder then what you think about circadian function as a contributor to this, and a lack of circadian function and a lack of light. Because if you know the immune system is also on your skin, and you have photoreceptors on your skin that are meant to take in sunlight, and yet we've been so scared away from sunlight. I'd love to hear your thoughts on circadian function and sunlight.
Absolutely. It's very interesting to use a metaphor. We talk about essential nutrients like vitamins A through Z and so forth. But there are many essential substances that power our body beyond that of vitamins A through Z. One of those is electromagnetic radiation, and particularly the visible portion of the spectrum, or in the near UV. This photochemistry that goes on in the skin that you're referring to, which is the activation of dehydrocholesterol into vitamin D3, ultimately, is a is a really powerful example of the fact that we're fed by many things other than nutrients alone. We're fed by good conversation. Hopefully, both of us now are getting
Hmm.
positive stuff that's affecting our nervous and immune systems in a favorable way. So yes, light is and now we learn much more about infrared light. And we say, well, infrared, that, gee whiz, that's just red light. What's going on there? Well, what's going on with red light is that the photoreceptors, which reside in the skin, as you're saying, that red light can penetrate several millimeters into the skin, infrared light, and it activates another set of processes. It's not the vitamin D activation processes, it's the limbic activation. It can have effect on vagal nerve tone and parasympathetic tone. So we're starting to maybe relearn with new scientific terms things that were historically known by many cultures for thousands of years, that we're being able to say, oh, here's some new knowledge about how to use light as a therapy, or how to use music as therapy. Music is another form of electromagnetic radiation that is vibration of sound waves through our nervous system that creates positive outcome in our immune and nervous system. So these are all powerful tools of personalized lifestyle medicine, and how they can be used effectively in a functional medicine focused practice.
Well, and I wonder with circadian function, the fact that our bodies do run on light and dark cycles, and the fact that we have become a society so addicted to artificial light. We're uplighting our homes, we have lighting outside. There's nothing sacred anymore about light and dark. So our bodies are being told pretty much at all times that it's noon all day, so that your body then doesn't know that, around 3 o'clock, it's supposed to start producing melatonin, which is why we have so many sleep issues at night. We have blue light coming into our rooms. We have blue light in our kitchens before we go to bed. So if you were to do functional medicine again now, would that be another pillar?
Well, I think it actually is a pillar. It maybe hasn't been addressed to the level it should. So I think what you've said is absolutely brilliantly true, that we need to relearn things that our ancestors actually knew empirically. They didn't have new to nature molecules, and they didn't have a lot of the tools that we had, but they had really good observation, and they used the tools that were available to find how to keep people healthy. And if you look at the blue zones, a lot of those blue zones are not high medicine areas. They're low medicine areas with high knowledge, wisdom that comes from thousands of years of cultural history.
Yeah, I also want to go back to something you said earlier, where you talked about the absence of disease not being technically I don't know, like I'll call it the gold star. It's not the end all be all. It's the function of your body. Like, are you able to function on a day? And I thought that was really powerful, because for someone who has dealt with so many health things, and I've been working very diligently the last 3 years, especially to restore my health, I have looked at it, unfortunately, as needing an absence of disease to have that stamp of good health and to feel like I've conquered and I've succeeded, because everything in our life is achievable by results. And so I wanted to see the brain tumor gone, the precancerous things in the stomach gone, the diabetes gone, the Hashimoto's gone. I wanted to see all these things erased. But I came to the conclusion recently, even with my naturopath, when I went to see my recent blood work, that over the last 3 years, I've reversed my age. My telomere lengths got better. I reversed my age. All of my numbers had completely changed and gone great. And she said it's almost like you have these isolated issues, but your body is working and doing its job as it's supposed to. And I was able to come off a bunch of supplements, and I was like, I was praying one night and I was like, God, I think I'm an asshole. I think I am waiting for something that I already have. I'm already functioning. I'm getting up every morning. I'm healthy. Yes, there are some things that, pop up here or there, like an anemia situation, and I have to take more beef liver or eat more meat, fine. But I'm good. And I'm feeling really good. And so maybe it isn't an absence of health that's really needed. It's just knowing that I'm functioning.
Yeah, I think you're really hitting on a very, very powerful concept. And this is actually the reason that I titled my last book, The Disease Delusion, because I think we have become so disease-centric that if we have something wrong in our body and we go to see our health provider and we don't get a diagnosis with a name, we feel incomplete, like, oh, I didn't get my disease diagnosis, versus really maybe what a functional medicine provider should provide is, let's find out why you don't feel well. We don't care what we call it. We care how you feel and how your body is functioning. And so let's make that our central focus. And then, by the way, whatever you want to call this thing later, you can call it gone. But that's not what we're really focusing on. We're focusing on raising the bar of your overall health capability at the functional level. Because when that happens, the body is magic. It has magic powers to create health and wellness and to resist disease once you get the systems working in alignment and the body doesn't feel it's under siege. And what we have now, however, are maybe some more sophisticated tools to understand why people don't feel well, why their function is compromised. So we can start to analyze that at a different level of specificity. And that's where the functional medicine model has some value, because it teaches us how to ask the right questions.
All right, Heal Squad, we're going to pause right here. Dr. Bland will be back tomorrow, and we are going to get into the supplement discussion and supplements that can prolong longevity, especially the ones we also have to be very careful of that are highly processed. Who would have known? So you don't want to miss it. In the meantime, be nice people, make good choices, and be present. Hey, Heal Squad. We have been on quite the journey together, and we're hearing from so many of you just how much this show is helping you heal and get better, and it makes us feel so good. We love, love, love it, and we just ask that you don't keep it to yourself. Spread the message and share the show or your favorite episode with your friends. And if you want to help us even more, you can leave us a 5-star rating and a comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and follow us on Instagram at Heal Squad. You can also DM us anytime because we love connecting with you. And finally, you can also join us on Patreon for our monthly live heal events with world-class healers and ad-free episodes exclusive only to Patreon and our Super Heal Squad for as little as $10 a month. So go to patreon.com/Heal Squad to join. Getting better isn't easy, friends, but as I say all the time, it's a whole lot easier if we can do it together. We love you all so much, and we love doing this thing called life with you.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or MariaMenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.